before we get to this passage on Moses and the burning bush, I just want to set up Moses to give you a sense of who he is. As you saw from the Bible Project video, he was a Hebrew baby whose mother put him into a basket. The Pharaoh's daughter found the basket and the baby, and so Moses was rescued and raised in the house of the Pharaoh. And eventually, though, Moses does something that gets him in trouble, and so he has to flee Egypt. And he flees to the land of Midian. And Midian is all the way across the Sinai Peninsula to the east of Egypt and over to what we call the Arabian Peninsula today. And that's where he settles down. He gets married. And this passage leads us up to the point where he's taking care of the flocks of his father-in-law, Jethro. I've chosen to come out to this, one of the most sacred spots at Telios Farm, the home that I make with Rebecca, to read this passage from the book of Exodus. Meanwhile, Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. Leading the flock beyond the wilderness, he came to the mountain of God, Horeb. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him as fire flaming out of a bush. When he looked, although the bush was on fire, it was not being consumed. So Moses decided, I must turn aside to look at this remarkable sight. Why does the bush not burn up? When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. He answered, Here I am. God said, Do not come near. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your father, he continued, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. But the Lord said, I have witnessed the affliction of my people in Egypt and have heard their cry against their taskmasters. So I know well what they are suffering. Therefore I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them up from that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the country of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now indeed the outcry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen how the Egyptians are oppressing them. Now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. I don't know how many times I'd read that passage about God saying to Moses, take off your shoes, for the place where you stand is holy ground. And, for decades, what I heard was God saying, hey, take your shoes off. Don't disrespect me. You're in my house. Take your shoes off. And in some cultures, that idea makes sense. Before you enter a mosque, for instance, you take off your shoes. Before you enter the house in Japan, you take off your shoes and you put on slippers. I did that when I visited there in 2007. And it's a way of making sure that you don't track in any dirt. So it's a sign of respect to the house that you take your shoes off. And that's how I'd heard it, for many, many years. But then the closer I got to wilderness, the more I started to hear it differently. And now the way I hear this is God is saying to this man, to Moses, take off your shoes. The place where you're standing is holy ground, and I don't want anything standing between you and me, not even your shoes. I want your feet to be touching this holiness, this sacredness. I want you to feel it on the very bottoms of your feet. Remember, we human beings, we're bodily creatures. We experience the world, we experience God through our senses. And God seems to be saying, listen, I'm in love with you. I don't want anything to stand between us, not even shoes. And so that's how I hear it now. And so when I'm out and I have my shoes off and my toes in the grass or on the sand, I feel like I'm standing on holy ground. And that's how I read this passage. I'm in love with you, God is saying, and I want you to feel me. I want you to feel the sacredness of our union. I don't want anything standing between us. Nothing. I love that reading.